Now we have the last two videos of Part D, Module 5, and after these two videos, we will complete Part D and also complete Module 5. After that, because this topic is very important, EL, very important, very useful. So even after that, I want to use many exercise questions to explain how to use this technology correctly. Yeah. All right, so probably in module 6, I will do that part. Yeah, module 6, because module 6, I talk about another technology, JSTL. Yeah, but that part, that technology, we do not need to spend a lot of time. So other than that, then I will give you many exercise questions of this EL. All right, so let's start. The topic, part D.3, EL implicit objects. I mentioned this type of implicit object several times, but now, finally, we need to study these implicit objects. Yeah. All right. First, places. Before we look at that implicit object first, so let's look at another important topic, places where EL expressions cannot be placed. Yeah. A lot of places you cannot use EL expressions. Yeah. So you need to be aware of this when you use the EL in your JSP. Yeah. All right. So first, JSP directives. You cannot use EL expressions in JSP directives. Yeah. The reason, so I want to explain from two different views. Yeah. The first view, just the general high-level view. Why EL expressions cannot be used in most of the JSP elements. Here I say most, not all, okay? Not all, because there is some exception. So we will see that exception later, soon. Yeah. So the EL expressions cannot be used in most of the JSP elements. The reason is very simple. Yeah. I remember I mentioned this some videos ago. Yeah. The reason is this. We know in the JSP, there are two environments, right? Yeah. So when we write JSP program code, usually we maintain two different environments. The first one, HTML environment, because that's the static part, right? That's the usual static part. Another environment, Java environment. Okay, so we embed Java code to do the dynamic content. Okay, so dynamic content. Yeah, but we need to maintain two different environments. All right, so now EL goes to the HTML environment. So you can see the environment is different. So now it goes to the Java environment. The reason is very simple. Because when you jump to the Java environment, you need to do switch. You need to write code, Java code, okay? And we know the principle. We try to avoid Java code in JSP, right? Avoid or minimize, because it's hard to, how do you do the dynamic content without using Java code? So actually minimize Java code, all right? Yeah. But we still want to do dynamic content, right? So EL provide a nice solution. So you do not need to go to the Java environment. You stay in the same HTML environment, but you can get dynamic content. How good is it? Right? Yeah. So from this view, so you can see it explains the reason why EL expressions cannot be used in most most of JSP elements. Yeah. So that's the general reason. Yeah. So now we come to JSP directives. Yeah. One typical JSP environment, right? Yeah. All right. So that's one view. Okay. Yeah. So this view, we're done this view. Yeah. Next, we go to another view. Yeah. Because another view also provides us some useful information. Yeah. So I want to talk about that, as some very useful background we need. Yeah. Thus, directives are evaluated when the JSP is compiled, translated, then compiled, right? So let's go back to the very beginning of the JSP technology. We do translation first. Translate from JSP to servlet code, right? So there is a hidden servlet file to be translated. Then the servlet file is compiled. Yeah. So at that time, JSP directives are processed. Okay. All right. So next, another. But EL expressions are evaluated later when a JSP is rendered. When is the time JSP is rendered? So here we talk about generating HTML content. What do you mean rendering a page, right? Page rendering. Yeah. Generating HTML content. When the HTML content is generated, in that step, EL expression is evaluated by the EL engine. So you see the content, you see the data, dynamic data from EL expressions. So this is another important view. So we need to have in our background. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So after that, EL expressions are not valid within JSP declaration, scriptlets, or expressions. See? So that's why I said it the most, right? So here you can see we list almost all JSP elements. Okay, so we cover almost all JSP elements. We cover directives, declarations, scriptlets, expressions. So what's left, right? What's left? There is one thing left. One special element left, JSP element left. JSP comments. Because comments is very special. Comments, remember, JSP comments, there are three different types comments. Three different types of comments. Yeah. But there is one type of comments. So that's the XML type comments. We know the XML types comments will be generated in the HTML content. Yeah. So when the page is rendered, the HTML content generated XML type comment still stays there for the users. Yeah. Sometimes we want to put some comments there. Yeah. That kind of special comments, you can see that can connect to the HTML content, right? HTML content. So that's a different environment, HTML environment. Yeah. So in that environment, EL can be used. So now you understand why almost, not all, this is an exception case. Okay? Yeah. So EL expressions can appear in XML type JSP comments. In that comments, we want to put some dynamic data. So that's the point. We want to put some dynamic data, not static. Static, we don't need to use EL, but you may want to put some dynamic data, right? Yeah. So you can do it. Yeah. All right, so that's this topic. Yeah. Next topic, EL, implicit objects, yeah, or implicit variables. Yeah. But because I mentioned this name before, implicit objects, implicit variables. Okay, if you read technology articles, the recent names for this concept called implicit variables. But I feel implicit objects is a better name. Yeah, better name, because we know when we call objects, so more precise. Yeah, the variables, because sometimes you may not connect variables, the general variables, to objects, right? Could be objects, could be non-objects, right? Yeah. So the information you can get from variables not as rich as from objects. Okay, yeah, because there is some uncertainty there. Well, all right. Anyway, yeah. So you just know this. Okay. So when people talk about implicit objects, implicit variables, but you know what is the concept they talk about. Okay. All right. So it's different from JSP, implicit objects. From the names, they are different. Only one name, they share the same name. Other than that, all the remaining implicit objects, they have the different names, but except one, just only one. Okay, all right. So let me go through all of them. Yeah, not too many, no. But we, use different categories to organize these implicit objects. Yeah. First, access JSP scopes. Yeah. When we need to access JSP scopes using EL expressions, we use these 4 implicit objects. Yeah. So you can see the JSP version, we don't have the scope. Here you can see scope. Yeah. If we drop the scope, then we go back to the JSP implicit object version. In JSP implicit version, we have the page, session, request, application, implicit objects. Okay, yeah. But here you can see, yeah, in order to separate these 2 different categories, so we don't want people confused, these 2 different types of implicit objects. So we attach, the designers, not we, the designers, they intentionally attach scope name, try to separate. Okay, yeah. So when you use, you won't get confused, right? So I use the EL version because I attach that scope name. Okay, the first type. Second type, access parameters. We need to access request parameters in our JSP. So when we need to do that, there are 2 implicit objects we can use. These 2. The first one, param. The second, param capital values. So you can see the way we use them, how different. You can guess. Param, we access single form parameter. Only access one value of the parameter. Param values, we can access multiple values for one parameter name. On the one parameter name, it is possible there are a list of values. For example, checkbox, right? user, there is a list of checkboxes. User can select multiple checkboxes. So we will get multiple values from the checkboxes. In this way, now you can use this param values to access one after another. Okay, all right. Here, let me give you simple examples to show how to use. Yeah. All right, the first one, dollar curly braces param dot name. Straightforward. We only access one value. Okay, only access one value. All right. But in case, suppose you have multiple values, it's possible. Multiple values, you can, if you use this way, you access the first value. Okay. If multiple, you have several values. But if you use this expression, you access the first one. All right. Yeah. No error. No error. Yeah. Second version. Second version. This time param value is .food. Food, that is the parameter name. Because for this case, we expect multiple values. When we have multiple values, we can use array to access. So we assume we can get a string array of parameter values. So we use the array index 0, 1, 2, and so on. Okay, so you can see the second implicit object is useful when we need to access multiple values. Okay, yeah. All right. And the next type, access headers. Headers, we have the similar situation. Yeah, similar to the parameter access. Yeah. Header values. Okay, the logic, you access one header value, but there is one header, you have multiple values, only one header. Yeah. So it is simpler than the parameter case. Parameter case, any parameter, you may have multiple values. Yeah. But for the header, only the language, only the lang header, language header. Yeah. Your page supports multiple languages. Only the lang headers, you may have multiple values. Yeah. So it's simpler than the parameter case. Yeah. All right, so the last type, others. The remaining, we still have a few more implicit objects. Yeah. Cookie, so very useful. We need to access cookie, init param, initial parameters. Yeah. So in this class, I have not talked about initial parameters. Yeah, but it is important. Yeah. So initial parameters, when we start our servlet the first time, initialization, we have a chance to read initial parameters from the configuration web.xml file. We know in this web.xml file, we can configure our servlet, right? So when we configure our servlet, we can put initial parameters there. Okay? So that concept is very important. Yeah. So for that reason, in our project 2, I will make that feature there. So I want you to have a chance to experience that initial parameters. Yeah. All right. So you know that concept. Yeah. So very simple, but it is useful. Right? All right. Yeah. So that's this init param, implicit object. Okay. All right. Then the last one also very important. The page context, capital C, page, capital C context. This one, why it's special? Because this one is the only one that has the same object name both in JSP implicit object, also EL implicit object. In JSP as well, you have one called page context. capital C. Yeah. In EL, implicit object, you also have this page context. Yeah. All right, you just know it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes you may need to use it. Yeah. All right. That's the video D.3. Yeah. So the last one. So I will complete this whole topic. Yeah. So in the last one, we have a few more important topics. Yeah. All right. So let's stop here. Yeah.